So I'm back and did decide to do a little short review for Stranger Things. Probably just going to be, I guess we'll just call it the second or volume 2 of season 4. So it's episode 8 and 9. I hadn't done any reviews on Stranger Things thus far because I hadn't really been doing very many TV show reviews or things like that one. This one's hard for me too because of the format in which it came out, and that they just kind of dump all of them on there with season 4, because I thought about it for season 4, but as soon as they came out I was going to watch all of them. So me and Amber watched all of them immediately when they first came out, so that was 1 through 7. Absolutely loved the first part of season 4. There were some, again, when I say I loved it, I mean I loved it. So when I say anything negative, it's more like nitpicky, as far as there were some story things that I didn't quite know where they were going yet, and then you know, everybody was and is pretty split up all over the world basically. And then you have these last 2 that came out, 8 and 9, and watched them just the other day, and have to say, really fucking good, really good in general. This show is probably my favorite show going, like still currently running. I think it has to be. There's not really much else that compares to it. I'm trying to think of anything that kind of rivals it. More recently, I had been originally I was very excited to watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, which, if you've watched the show at all or channel, then you know that that did not pan out very well in my opinion. But prior to that, it was more of, I'm trying to think of what like event TV things where I was literally excited to talk about it with people that I work with, or just family members, friends, all that stuff, are all thinking and anticipated and excited. I mean, like Game of Thrones was probably the last thing that I remember that was like that highly anticipated. Although again, it's a different format. So Game of Thrones, you know, they released 1 episode on HBO at the time each week. So it was a little easier to probably do review format. But this one, they all came out, so I had to watch them all. So, and it's super, super dense, everything that's happening. So for the last 2 episodes, episode 8 and episode 9, episode 8 I believe was, what's it called, Papa? And then 9 I think was Piggyback. Both are important to the actual plots of what's happening in those. This is spoilers in case you have any inclination that I'm not going to talk about everything that actually happened during the show, because I will, and I will spoil it. Although I'm going to keep it pretty brief because, again, there's so much stuff that happens in this, and there's so much good stuff that I almost don't even know where to start, other than the fact that it is awesome. So my biggest concerns, not even concerns, but my nitpicky things from the first part of the season 4, it was more of the group was pretty split up, which again, I actually thought the directors, the Duffer Brothers, handled really well because of how they wove everything together. Like, yes, some people had smaller parts and they may not have been as important in this, but that happens in the show where you have, I don't know, 15 main characters, something like that. Maybe not main characters, but 15, you know, key important parts and recurring characters in that, if not more. But having them split up and how they were all going to come back and how this was going to end, that was not a concern any longer. Things just wrapped up so well. Again, I'm not going to go into super specifics just because there's so much cool stuff. But basically, when it comes down to it, the idea of Elle or Eleven, you know, back in the facility working with Papa and who's the other guy? Paul Gross? No, Paul Reiser. Paul Reiser, in the facility trying to get her powers back. You know, she has some real good epiphany moments of what happened, what's happened with her. That's awesome. She realizes what piece of shit Papa is, even though, I mean, everybody's already known that, but, you know, he's a smooth talker, and it's easy for him to just kind of convince you real quick that, you know, maybe it wasn't so bad, maybe it was for your best good benefit or whatever it is. Either way, back there, she gets powers back. She's, you know, put on display how powerful she is. There's some backstabby things where it was going down a very gonna make me angry path, and then you realize military's still out to end Elle because they think that she's responsible for the deaths in Hawkins, which in a very roundabout way she kind of is, but not, I mean, killing her isn't going to do anything with this. It's actually going to make it much worse. So, you know, they're kind of having standoff there. There's a bunch of tense moments. Papa, you know, gets taken down by a snipe Sipu, and then the pizza boy, Surfer Pizza, comes in and saves the day, which is awesome. Again, because that was one of the storylines. You're like, where or why are they over here? What are they doing? they're gonna just drive over there and help, and it's like, oh, they did, and it was pretty perfect. Elle brought down utilizing her powers, helicopter, which was cool. Their powers too, by the way, hers and one, or Henry, or Vecna, whatever you want to call him, which is even kind of the line in the movie, which is fantastic. Show, I should call it show. They're just like movies. Quality's fantastic. Brings that down. They all start, she's figuring out, okay, we got to get to Hawkins. She figures out how to piggyback on, again, you can watch the show if you want to get the details, but how to help, because she realizes that her friends are, trying to plan to fight Vecna, and then she realizes the severity of what's actually happening, where Max is on the list. And then you go back to what's happening. Okay. The show to me is kind of like Scooby-Doo and the Goonies, but then there's a good bit of Lost Boys in there. Again, there's a bunch of movie references in the final 2 episodes in the whole season, of course, but in the fact that it's, they're trying to solve a mystery, trying to figure it out, but then they're trying to fight as well. But the thing that I really appreciate is, again, in so many movies, and especially kids movies and stuff like that, it's always the plan, well, we have to fight. We have to go and stand up to this insurmountable odds, and then they just go do it. This one, they kind of started saying that, and then it was like people were in the group were just like, no, we go do that. We don't stand a chance. This is just like Elle, but maybe worse. And why would we have a stand-up fight? We can't fight that. So they end up making up a plan, and the plan isn't bad. The plan is logical. They thought it through. They have things set up how they want to do this, and then I'm become more of a nitpicky person, I guess, just because I do kind of expect people that put together projects and things like this to think things through a little bit. Obi-Wan, you could take a lot of notes from this show, but even be able to communicate with part of the team that's in the Upside Down versus the team that's here, someone that's watching Max, and how do they do these things, how do they time these things. They're doing a distraction, which is maybe the best, most epic distraction possibly ever. Master of Puppets, perfect song choice for that. Fantastic. Eddie, he's one of my favorites. So, so many set pieces were awesome. But again, they had an actual plan. It wasn't just, we're going to go fight them. Bunch of kids going to fight this super-powered underworld, or upside down world boss that basically creates and can control everything with his mind, even time, and super powerful, right? But they had a plan. I appreciate that. And they put the plan into action. A lot of things kind of go the way it's supposed to until, of course, it doesn't. Even though in my mind I was like, hey, this might just work. Maybe they just take care of this. Then the next 5th season, they're just, on to something else, and they'll figure it out, and then, the season will end happy. No, it's not the case. It shouldn't be the case, because if Vecna's as bad as they say he is, and he is, they use on to that a little bit. So, you have all of these moving pieces, and this is what I appreciate maybe the most about the show, which is saying a lot, because there's a lot of things I love. The soundtrack is just ridiculous, let alone the songs that are actually in it, but the score that's there, it's so good. How the show is edited, put together, the tension it can build and bring together, the use of silence multiple times where it just goes silent and dark and leaves you to think and kind of sit there and fester and stew on what's getting ready to happen. Did something happen? Did it not? It's fantastic. But when you have all of these different storylines going on, Game of Thrones was another one that did this really well for the most part until they didn't towards the end, where you have all these different storylines and then you bring them and weave them together towards at the end, it makes a point. I don't think there was any storylines that haven't been touched on here. You have everything from even like the bullies that are the athletes that are looking to kind of, find Eddie and find the group. They kind of come back in here and get wrapped up in a very awesome, tragic, splitting manner. That's fantastic. It's just the attention to detail. The fact that you have to sit there, and I was having this discussion with Amber, and we were talking like, I wonder in this scenario if it's best to even write like backwards, like know the end point of where you're going and then try and piece these things together, because the fact that they were able to keep track of everything was just stunning to me, and I really, really liked it, and I really appreciated it. I would just go ahead and, if I'm going to say standout moments, I think that might be the easiest thing, because I can't go over the whole plot because it's just too all over the place, and what's going to be happening is going to be awesome. Oh my god, I just forgot about some of the stuff that happened in Russia. That was fantastic. Good scenes, good acting all around. some of the things that I've complained about in some of the other shows, especially some of the Disney shows, where they do start to get a little preachy and a little over the top, whether it be being politically correct or being woke enough for these different things. There were moments where I was going like, oh, you know, maybe this is going down a little bit more of a, okay, you got to jump on and you got to talk about this. But every time something started to come up, whether if it's, you know, Will's like sexuality or like what he's actually doing, or if it's a matter of, I don't know, there were just so many parts where it could have turned into something very awkward and very like public service announcement, and it didn't to me. It didn't to me because it seemed very genuine. It seemed like in the situation, if this was actually happening, you know, this is how somebody would respond, and the dialogue and the acting was just really, really good. Again, a couple of moments I'm like, I don't know if I want to watch this. It wasn't because I was upset by any means about, you know, somebody trying to force a message on me. It was because it was uncomfortable, because the actor was acting well enough to be like, this is them explaining, like blurting out their feelings, but, you know, kind of masking it a little bit. It's very touching. Again, and the connection between different family members and friends, you know, it gets rekindled. It's just fantastic. Again, I have very little qualms with pretty much anything that happened here, if I even did. Nope. I think as of right now, it's sitting pretty high on my list of fantastic shows. But I was gonna say, standout scenes. Clearly, you have Eddie, you know, distracting with Dustin, the bats, bat things from the Upside Down. That was awesome. Coupled with that, Max's chase scene with Vecna, Hopper, okay, Murray with the flamethrowers in Russia is awesome, but then probably a little superseded by Hopper grabbing the Conan sword that just happened to be on the ground and going to town on a Demogorgon. That was the other thing, slight jump here. The fact that you tie in the stories where the Russian story actually has an effect on what's happening in Hawkins, because of the fact I'm like, you know, there's no way they're gonna be able to get over there tonight and help this out. You know, they don't have the superpowers to be like Elle and piggyback on top of this. And it's like, well, no, but we know that these things are particles and pieces of the Upside Down. They're not, I don't think they're aware of Vecna by any means at this point, but they know that if we hurt this, it'll probably help at least somewhat with the fight that they're doing in Hawkins. And sure as shit, it did. Like when they were actually burning them up, and you know, the montage and again cutting together, much better than how Obi-Wan would cut between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fighting and Reva and whatever running around the desert, which didn't make any sense and just really took away from the story and took away from the action intensity. Here they're cutting together where, you know, Elle's fighting Vecna, Hopper's, you know, sword fight with a Demigorgon. I mean, it's just awesome. It's done really well. That one's a really cool scene. So much of the music when it's played there, when you had Separate Ways from Journey at the end of episode 8, I believe. That one really surprised me because the song came on and I was like, is this it? I can hear it, and it started, and it was, but the tone they set with again the directing and the editing and the sound there, it was like they're going off to war and it's probably not going to end well for everybody. And then if we don't have to say what happened with Eddie. Tragic, but hey, if you're gonna go out, might as well go out like that. What happened with Max was just gnarly, and I'm very interested to see how all of this plays out. So, end all be all, I just really love the show. I mean, there's so many things. Argyle, I can't forget Argyle. Argyle's the man. Again, maybe seemingly comedic relief, but if he wasn't there, so much of the show wouldn't have happened the way it did. They wouldn't have found Elle the way they did. They wouldn't have been able to let Elle piggyback the pizza thing. Okay, final thing that I did think was maybe my favorite was the fact that when they were trying to distract the Surfer Pizza not distract, but get him to let them use the kitchen and just distracted him with the joint, and the look of happiness on his face, and it just stayed the same. I was like, this show knows what's up. I mean, it's just, the show is, it's written by people that are fans of movies, clearly, because there's a bunch of Stephen King, like horror movie references, but the dialogue is written to be actually how people, I think, would actually say things. Because there were several times when I'd be like, well, I would say, you can go screw yourself. And then they would just come out and say, oh, go screw yourself. Things like that. Or like, that went really well. I was like, that went really well. They would actually say the dialogue right after I said it in my head or even out loud while I'm watching it. And I was like, this is a sign that, again, the writers, screenwriters, I'm assuming it was the Duffer Brothers too, maybe not, but They just do so much better than so many other shows. So I'm a huge fan of this one. I mean, honestly, it has to be a 10 out of 10. I've liked all the seasons, literally all the seasons, but I think this one has to be my favorite because it just escalates. And I did go back and watch the first season, episode 1 again, and it's amazing to see how far they've come, and the little bits of stuff that they started leaving, they call back in this one. Again, they're doing it right. They're doing it right. So I'm super excited for season 5. I don't know when that one's coming out yet, but based on how the end of this one went, it's going to be pretty actiony. Maybe I don't really have any idea how it's going to go. So I'm excited. We may do a speculation video on what we actually think will happen, just because I'm sure I'm going to think about it a lot. But let me know what you guys thought of this season, especially the second part of this season. Did you like it as much as I did? Did you not? What did you not enjoy about it? And if you really needed to, you can also make sure that people know, especially people that work at Disney, that if they need to figure out how to catch a 10-year-old from running, they do that in this also, where there's just a guy that just runs down and tackles a 10-year-old. It was really easy. It took about 3 seconds. So, Princess Leia, yeah, you can pick that up from her.